Time now for GB News star Nigel Farage and new bombshell revelations from his debanking scandal, where he has sensationally unearthed previously confidential but absolutely outrageous comments made about him by snooty NatWest staff. In a huge cache of documents given to Nigel by NatWest after he made a subject access request to the bank, a process where someone can demand all data and documents from a company which features their name or details, Nigel discovered staff saying they would throw milkshakes over him and celebrated him being debanked by mocking, "Have we single-handedly driven him out of the country? I hope that knocked him down a peg," is what one worker said. Nigel, another staffer told colleagues they'd have paid to be the person to debank you. Is the rot as bad as you'd feared?
Worse. No, it's worse. I mean, I thought after the Coutts files, it couldn't possibly get worse. And that's what I put in the subject access request to NatWest, which by law should come back in 30 days. But the loophole is they said it was so complex that they wouldn't come back for 3 months. And that is what you're seeing today. If this was their attempt to sort of kick this into the long grass and hope it goes away, I tell you what, they've picked on the wrong chap, because I'm not going to put up with this. This is the culture that the Queen of Woke, Dame Alison Rose, brought into the head office and throughout the bank of NatWest and indeed the subsidiaries like Coutts. It's funny, isn't it, in life? Those who talk about diversity and inclusion are actually the most illiberal, narrow-minded people you could ever want to meet. She is responsible for this culture. Now, the significance of the timing of this should not be lost on anybody. On Thursday of this week, there is a full board meeting of NatWest, and on Friday morning, we'll get the quarterly figures. After the Coutts debacle, they appointed what they called an independent person to come in to look at what had happened. Travis Smith, our city company, whose emeritus chair has described Brexiteers as racists, xenophobes, and Little Englanders. Well, some independence for you. But at this Thursday's meeting, they will decide on which terms Dame Alison leaves NatWest. Bear in mind, folks, this is not a private company. We bailed these people out of their greed and stupidity. 38.6% of this bank is owned by you, the taxpayer. And she is on course to walk out of Thursday's meeting with 11.5 million sterling. Just think about that. To be rewarded for failure, rewarded for breaking every single code under banking law since it first existed, under the Financial Conduct Authority regulations. She's on the verge of walking out with 11.5 million quid. And nearly 40% of that will be paid for by GB News viewers and the rest of the country. And what I want with these revelations is for the world to understand that these people who have politicized both public and private corporations should not be rewarded for failure, should not be rewarded for prejudice and for bias. She must not walk out with that vast sum of money. And as for the staff working in an organisation who wouldn't even have their jobs if it wasn't for us bailing them out, they should, all of those people who've made these vile comments should be suspended and investigated.
Well, these comments, Nigel, these comments are vile. You've been described as an awful human being. What's the crackpot saying now? They want to drive you out of the country. They want to throw milkshake at you, which is an assault. Now, Nigel, I know you well. You're no snowflake, but does it hurt reading stuff like this?
No, not really. It doesn't hurt at all. I am so used to the illiberalism of the so-called liberals that I can deal with it. It's horrible stuff. Although, Mark, maybe crackpot. Well, maybe they've got a point there. I'll give them that one.
Nigel, I need to know what these extreme opinions are that you have, because you're arguably the most consequential politician of your generation. 17.4 million people voted for Brexit. So what are these extreme opinions of which they speak?
Well, I mean, I have to accept I'm guilty of the charge of extremism, obviously. I mean, I believe in self-governing democratic nations. I believe that we should be able to choose the people that make our laws, and once every 5 years, sack them. I think that the integrity of our borders is something fundamental. After all, the first duty of government is to protect its citizens and to stop bad people or terrorists coming into our country. Worst of all, in the charges I've seen today, worst of all, I do not agree with the bank's view on climate change. You see, I am skeptical. I am skeptical about net zero. Now, they hoped and prayed, as you're showing on the screen now, that the press would think that somehow this all meant that I was a bit dodgy when it came to financial matters. But nothing could be further from the truth. And it all goes to show the arrogance of those in power, the march of the woke brigade through our public and private corporations. And I have the honor to be the first person to genuinely have the voice and the position to stand up and fight back against this. And when I, as it were, came out in the summer as being debanked, a lot of other people came out. And I want everybody who's been debanked or treated badly to put in their subject access requests. Let's turn this culture around.
Indeed, Nigel, your legacy is Brexit. You're the godfather of Brexit. I think you helped Boris Johnson win the 2019 general election, which kept Jeremy Corbyn out of number 10, which would have been a national security and economic disaster. I think your other great legacy, as well as GBNews, is going to be standing up for ordinary people who are caught up in this debanking scandal. You're a high-profile case, but this is the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
1 million people. 1 million people and businesses have been debanked over the course of the last 4 years. Their means of existing in a modern 21st century society have been taken away from them. And that, in the end, is what made me go public about all of this. I could have just crawled away. But I thought, no, if I stand up and fight, I won't be just fighting for me. I'll be fighting on behalf of so many other people who don't have a voice. But Mark, let me pick you up on something. When you say my legacy, I'm not on the verge of croaking it. I'm not on the verge of retiring. There are many, many more fights and campaigns left in me, believe you me.
Including leader of the Conservative Party after the next election, Nigel. Yes or no? You can tell me, we're pals.
I have no idea. All I can say is that the centre of gravity of Conservative Party members and voters is miles away from their parliamentary party. They will lose the next election. They deserve to lose the next election, and they need to lose the next election. Otherwise, we'll stay on with two brands of big state, high tax, high spend, surveillance control, forms of social democracy. Only by losing can we actually get a party that stands up for the liberty, freedom, and opportunity and enterprise of the individual. And if I'm able to help that debate in any way after the election, do you know what? I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll be there.
He didn't say no. You heard it here first. Nigel, more power to you. We'll catch up soon. Of course, Nigel is back tomorrow at 7 on GB News. A NatWest Group spokesperson has said we've written to Mr Farage to apologise sincerely for the deeply inappropriate comments made about him and the poor behaviours displayed. Neither are consistent with the standards of service that our clients should expect. The group has commissioned an independent review into recent events, phase 1 of which has been delivered to the board, and will complete the necessary processes and publish the key findings along with the group's response as soon as possible. We're determined to learn the necessary lessons from this so that in the future we live up to the high expectations that our clients rightly place upon us. Look, my takeaway from that is that Nigel Farage is going to take over the leadership of the Conservative Party after the next election.